We're really excited to be here. My name is Patricia Helmuth, and I'm on the board of the Adult Numeracy Network. I serve as the editor, and I really have enjoyed my time working with adult education students because they come to us with math anxiety, math fears, as Eric pointed out, and to be able to see them grow and develop confidence is so exciting. And so I'm really passionate about bringing activities that students at all multiple levels can participate in and feel good about and learn, and to give opportunities for teachers to see how to use them in their classroom. One hat that I wear, one of them, you know what it's like in adult education. We wear lots of hats lots of times. And one hat that I wear is as a New York State teacher leader in mathematics, which is where I met our co-presenter today when the initiative was launched in 2014. And with that, I'll hand it over to her.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Maggie Brown, and I'm serving as the Region 1 representative for ANN, and that includes you, everyone in New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, on up to Maine. And I've been in adult education now for about 15 years, and I really like doing PD. So this is one hat that I'm learning to wear more often. Okay, so welcome to everyone. Introduce yourself a moment in the chat if you haven't already done so. But also, can you tell us, what do you have students do almost every class? Almost every day in class, what is something that you have students do almost every day? So go ahead and put that in the chat. All right, and we're gonna notice, welcome Linda, welcome Tonia, Catherine. I'm very excited to see so many people joining us today. We're almost at 50 people, wow. Henry, nice to meet you. So go ahead and put in the chat what you do. I see some people writing in the chat their routines. They answer some sort of writing prompt, says Esli. Yep, that's a routine. Welcome, Elizabeth, Michelle from Trenton. It's good to see so many people tuning. Okay, we reviewed the previous lesson. That's a routine. Something that you have students do almost every class. We have a do now with the previous lesson. Yep. We write messages daily, dates, times, weather, and temperature. Oh, great, great, great for ESL class. Date, month, year. Michelle says we have a word of the day. Okay. Donna says we have a word of the week. Oh, these are all great routines. Hi, welcome Karen. My students, she says her students answer a question of the day. All right, so we are members of the Adult Numeracy Network, otherwise known as ANN. And it's the professional organization for math educators who work with adults in adult education. And we are a community of teachers learning together. So I think the emphasis is on learning, not so much teaching only, learning together. Our handle, our Twitter handle is @AdultNumeracy1. And if you attach hashtag ANNMath, then it will come up on that Twitter. And our website is adultnumeracynetwork.org. All right, so yes, we are a nonprofit, but we work all over the nation, as well as we have people tuning in to our meetings from South America, Europe, North Africa. So it's very interesting that we're able to have a worldwide reach. Review previous lessons, says Adrit. Good job. All of these are great routines. We're inviting you to join the Adult Numeracy Network. We've collected many resources for adult numeracy teachers. Most of them are free and open on the website to anyone who clicks, but there are additional benefits, including events for members only, and we hope you will sign up. All right. If there's any ANN members here today, we'd love to acknowledge you. Let us know in the chat. We're here to share resources and invite you to our learning community. All right, so from the ANN Teaching and Learning Principles, all right, we support teachers and students around the frame of teaching and learning. And these principles that you're about to see on the screen were first written into our organization in '94 when we've been founded. So we've been around quite a while. And we're going to use some of these principles today as a frame for reflecting on the instructional routines we're going to do together. So we believe mathematics instruction should build on what students already know, valuing the various informal and alternative strategies they already use to solve problems. As well, math instruction should include opportunities for students to question, reason, solve problems, define goals, monitor their own progress, using skills such as estimation, mental math, computation, technology when appropriate, and also in an atmosphere of support from their peers if possible. All right. When we plan our activities for our classrooms, we try to accomplish this vision of math instruction, where students are building on prior knowledge or ways of doing math. They're engaged in questioning, problem solving, self-assessment, and sense making. And we'll come back to some of these ideas a little later on. Okay, so we saw several people put their routines in the chat. So when it comes to mathematical routines, we're wondering, what routines do you use in your class and what is helpful about having a routine? What is helpful about having a routine? Any routine, math or otherwise. All right, so yes, we saw cardinal and ordinal numbers. We saw sharing, we saw group work. We saw answering a question of the day. Other routines include exit ticket, journal free write, going over homework. Right, that's right. Lorraine says increases learning. Tonya says it relieves anxiety. So all of these are great reasons for having routines in your class.
Yeah, and what Irene said, routine helps my students and I know what's next and how everything is connected. I like that.
That's great. So it gives a structure for both the teacher and the students, and a baseline. As Lynn says, it gives a baseline. You can see growth later on, and solidifying concepts. These are all great reasons to have routines. And so we're going to work today on some instructional routines for math, for numeracy learning. And what do we mean when we say routines? All right, so instructional routines are specific and repeatable. That's right, you do them over and over. Specific and repeatable designs for learning that support both the teacher and the students in the classroom, enabling all students to engage more fully in learning opportunities while building crucial mathematical thinking habits. I think the authors got it right. A well-designed instructional routine opens up conversations and thinking about math that might not happen by themselves. All right, so these instructional routines are meant to also support the mathematical practices, since we do them often and they're applicable among many topic areas. So routines specifically construct mathematical practice number 3, constructs viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others. Students have to share their reasoning. And mathematical practice 7 says, look for and make use of structure. So you're going to see in these routines that we're going to share today that we're definitely addressing both of those mathematical practices. Steve Jobs is said to have worn the same basic outfit every day. That might seem a little silly, but it makes the point. One advantage of routines it frees up our mental energy, which allows us to focus. All right. Students can focus and engage more deeply with the content of an activity when they're not dealing with questions like, what am I supposed to be doing? All right. They already know from habit, from having repeated that routine many times. Teachers can then focus on student thinking and the math at hand rather than always presenting instructions. And it makes student thinking visible, right? So these kinds of focus is what makes a good instructional routine. All right, so now we get to experience two mathematical routines. So you're going to be engaging as learners, and then a little later, we'll have the opportunity to reflect on those routines as teachers. So just try to be present in the activity and not do too much analysis at first. So, and then later on, we'll get the chance to do that. All right, so I'm passing it on to Patricia to get us started with our routines.
So our first numeracy adventure today is called a unit chat. And this is a routine that works with students at all levels in HSC instruction, but also is good to use with ESL students because it helps to solidify language. So the way this routine works is we're going to look at an image with things that can be counted. And the question is how many of something we see in the image. And there's no one right or wrong answer. So students, regardless of their math or language proficiency, can express their ways of seeing and counting objects in the image. So before I show you the image, I would just like to talk about how some of us, and I'm saying myself here, need time to think quietly and process before I'm ready to share. And if someone else shares before I've had a time to think, then I don't get that opportunity to have that aha moment. So I'm going to show the image, but I'm going to ask everybody to not put anything in the chat right away. We will give you a cue when it's time to start putting in everything in the chat. But so get ready. The image is coming, but remember, don't put in the chat what you see in the image until you get the cue. So is everybody ready? Let's go. So how many? Just think quietly for a minute. I'm setting my timer.
Remember, the instruction was to not post stuff in the chat until you get the cue, right? You want to give everybody a chance to think through it before they start seeing some answers.
No problem. We're almost there. 57, 58, 59, 60 seconds. All right. Might want to give your students 90 seconds. That's Maggie's rule, 90 seconds. So please, in the chat, put your response. What do you see in the image? How many of something? So I saw Astrid, you said there's 60 dots. How do you know that there's 60? You could either put a response in the chat or unmute and let us know.
60, because there are 4 white with 6 black points, black dots, and then 6 red with 3 white dots and 4 white with 3 orange dot each one.
Ah, so thank you for that. So you did what's called subitizing, where you did groups of different objects that were the same to do your counting rather than count one by one. So I saw, Alexandra, you said you saw 2 diamonds. Where did you see that? You could unmute or you could just put something in the chat.
That's the first thing I noticed. As soon as you opened it up, the diamonds just popped up. The red, the outside, and then in the middle. That's the first
Okay.
thing I saw.
So you're seeing the white dots as a diamond and the orange dots as a diamond? That's what you're seeing?
Yes, that's what I saw.
Okay. So, Ethelene, forgive me if I'm not saying it right. You say you see 10. Can you say more about that? Either in the chat or unmute? All right. Well, while we're waiting for that, Karen, you said you see 20 sets of 3 dots. How do you know that there's 20 sets? So Karen, if you could either say in the chat or unmute.
So I counted the number of dice with 3, and then there are 4 with 6, but that's 8 more with 3.
Ah, so you did a little bit of like an equation there
Right.
to come up with that.
Yes.
All right. What else did I see here that I thought was interesting? A couple of people talked about squares, seeing a bunch of squares. So, oh, Eric, you said 26 and then you changed your mind to 30.
Yeah.
Where are you seeing all these squares?
So each die is an individual square, and then, so then the 4 in each corner is a square, and then the 4 in the middle of each side is a square, and then the 4 in the middle of the whole thing is a square, and then the whole thing is a square. So I think it's 30.
So, did anybody get a different amount of squares? So Lisa, I see that you're saying you see columns. Where are you seeing columns? Lisa. All right. So how about we move to one more person sharing before we put on our teacher hats? I noticed, Lombardo, that you have put an equation in the chat. That's what you're seeing. Would you mind talking about that, telling us more about where you see that equation? If you want to unmute or put it in the chat.
I just saw a lot of dice with 3 dots, counted them up, and then the number was 6 dots and added them together.
Okay, so that's similar to what we heard before with you came up with 60 dots, and instead of counting them one by one. Did I miss anything interesting in here that we should talk about? "20 sets of 3 dots." I don't know. We found a lot of stuff in here. And thank you, everybody. Oh, wait. Lisa said, oh, the way she came up with what was I asked her where she saw columns and or just went up and down and across like a crossword puzzle. Is that what you were responding to, Lisa? Oh, Lorraine says there's lots of opportunity here to increase vocabulary. I'm glad you noticed that. And that kind of brings us to going back to putting on our teacher hats. So if you're going to facilitate this in your classroom, you would do what we did, show an image that has some kind of structure, ask your students how many, and give them that important think time. Then have students share their different ways of seeing and counting. And there's different ways you can do that. If you are in-person class, you can, of course, write the, as each student shares, you can write it on the board. But also, if you are in a virtual class, I do want to share with you one thing that we have created, and we're going to share a link with you in the chat right now, if I can get it. Maybe I'll stop sharing for a minute so I can get it for you. And then you can use this with your students and they can respond in the Jamboard. Here's the link. So you can get a copy of that and share it with your students. And that would be a way to facilitate it online. So back to the slideshow. We do want to make sure that we ask our students questions to draw out their thinking, get them talking amongst each other, questioning each other, like, where do you see that? I don't see that there. I think I see something different. I think I see more squares or less squares than the other person. So let's just for a few minutes think about how would we use this routine in our class. So please go ahead and put your response in the chat. How might you use this routine, and how might it connect to the math that you are currently teaching? And Oriel, you have a question here. What if the student asks how many what? That's part of what a unit chat is about. It's students just pick something. Like you see the one picture up there. Well, they might count how many pits there are in avocados. They might count the total number of avocados. They might count how many halves there are. So this is really kind of open-ended, and it helps students to develop those thinking skills where they're thinking for themselves, like, okay, I have to really look at this and think about how many what. And that's part of the reason also for giving them the think time, so that they can really think about, what are they seeing? What am I seeing here? So Alexandra says that it would be a good way to go over even, what are even numbers and what are odd numbers. Oh, Ariel says, yes, I get it. So throw it back to them. Or, I mean, yeah, throw it back to them and a student can answer the question. That's a good idea. And as a routine. It would be something that you would be doing over and over. So they would get used to it the second, third time around. So Francine says she would use it as a warm-up activity for a variety of math skills. For example, Lisa set up an equation for a pre-algebra lesson. Yes. Pictures and reflection is pictures are a great start to a lesson. Special ed students can benefit from it as well as those who aren't, which is so true. Students at multiple levels. And that's what we're trying to reach. We're trying to make activities that are accessible to every student in your class. So every student learns that, yes, I am a math person because I see something in that picture that I can talk about. We didn't talk about fractions or decimals or percents, but we could have in that image talked about what fraction of the dice are red, what percent of them have 3 dots. So Tanya says this becomes a common denominator for engagement. I like that comment. Yes, thank you. So thank you for sharing. In the activity, you brought out some great things about the image. We're going to move now into our next numeracy adventure. And for that, I'm going to hand it back to Maggie.
Oh, hi again. So I was so happy to see everyone participating so great with this activity. I'm going to get ready to show you another one. So this one is called Which One Doesn't Belong? And it's a pretty straightforward concept, but let me just back up a minute. One way we can help students develop different ways of thinking in math is to have them classify objects. On working on these kinds of tasks, they come up with their own classification for objects, and they talk about classifications that their peers came up with. They learn to discriminate carefully and recognize properties of objects, describing and using new vocabulary if needed. They can develop mathematical language and definitions and get comfortable in the space that, you know, there's things to learn as well as things that they can bring to every activity. So Which One Doesn't Belong is a great resource for bringing in this kind of rich classification activity to our students. So basically, it presents 4 of something, and you have to come up with a reason why at least one of the 4 things doesn't belong to the other 3. All right, so then that would require careful observation. And then, of course, there's no quote unquote right answer. All right, so let's try it and see how it works. Okay, we're going to go to the next slide and see an image of 4 things, and all the slides are labeled. And if we, you know, if you were doing this with your class, you could present it on a Jamboard, but today we're just going to get you to take a look at it. And I want to warn you not to put anything in the chat. Once again, we're going to allow people to have 90 seconds, maybe 60 or 90 seconds of quiet time. So no responses in the chat at first. But when you see the image, each one is labeled A, B, C, and D, one of the labels. And you are going to refer, when you do get ready to make your comment in the chat, you're going to refer to each shape by its lettered designation. All right. So here is the image, and or the 4 images, and they're labeled with letters. And we're going to give you 60 seconds. Is it 60, Patricia, or 90? 60 seconds of quiet time before we ask you to respond in the chat. On your marks, get set, go. 60 seconds. oops, our 60 seconds has expired. So now you can start putting your comments in the chat. Remember, you are identifying one of the images as different from the others, and you're going to give a reason. Okay? I see Francine says D, the shapes are not made of straight lines. Okay. D, because the shapes have no corners. People like D. D, because it starts with more than one. Okay. Wonderful. Renee says D is circles. Irene says B because it's green. Oh, these are great. All right, so people saw a lot and they're absolutely adding in their reasons. A, because the colors it has two different colors. D, because the first item has 3 versus 1. Pattern is not consistent in D. A says more than one color. So what does that mean? D has no sharp edges. Brandy says D because there are no sharp edges.
Well, there's circles.
Okay.
Yeah, there's circles.
They're circles.
So the other ones have some kind of sharp edge.
Some kinds of sharp edge, right?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. And someone else said because D has no straight lines. And I hadn't thought of either of those things. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm very interested to say the dots are out of alignment. Catherine, can you say some more about that? What does that mean? The dots are out of alignment?
Well, and everything is horizontal or vertical except the slanted one on the last one. In D.
Right. I didn't notice that. That's fascinating. Yes.
That's the only thing I see out of all
a little bit
four.
crushed. Okay. Wow, that's interesting. Ushindi says she's torn between D and A. Can Ushindi say something about that?
Yes. Hi, I'm torn because A has the 2 colors, and then D starts off with 3 dots rather than all the rest of them only have 1 shape as the first one. So I don't know.
I see. Okay, great.
I don't know.
Yeah, so maybe we should clarify that with this activity, there's at least one reason why every image doesn't belong to the set. They have some things that are in common, but there's at least one reason why each image doesn't belong.
Okay, so yes, this activity actually is a 4-point activity. For the interest of time, we asked you to pick one that may not belong to the other 3. But the way that this activity is designed on a website, wodb.ca, there's actually a website for this. And the author encourages us to look at each item, each of the 4 items, and find a reason why each of the 4 would not belong to the other 3. So yes, this can go on quite a bit. Oh, great. A, because it has multiple colors. Okay, great. So now I see people are starting to put back their teacher hats on. Lorraine is saying, as an ESL instructor, these numeracy activities are rich in vocabulary development. So now we're just going to backtrack and take a look at it as a teacher. So if you were going to present this to your class, you would do just as we did. We present 4 images for students to compare. It could be numbers, shapes, graphs, photos, right? And we allow them time to, I usually give them 90 seconds to privately and personally come up with reasons why each one may be different from the other 3. So, you know, they're looking for several statements because they're picking one at a time and using all 4 in turn. And then they're going to actually write down their reasons. And so after the 90 seconds, they come back and share out to the group what are the reasoning behind their choice. And remember, mathematical practice number 3, you're going to decide on your reasoning, and then you might have to defend your reasoning, because then other students are going to ask you, where do you see that? Why do you say that? I don't know what you're talking about. Can you explain? And so that becomes a rich conversation. Absolutely. I've used this in my class, and I really was so excited to see students came up with words. They started saying, A has equilateral triangles, and I'm like, oh, okay. People know what equilateral means. And they said B is a grid, and it has squares. The squares, each one is the square of 1 and then 2 and then 3 and so on. So people came up with a lot, and they engaged, and then they had to explain to their peers. So if you ever have like a quiet class and you want them to get talking, then definitely this is a way to get them having in conversation. So we're going to use a little time to find out how might you use this routine in your class. Which one doesn't belong, and how might it connect to the math you're teaching in your class. So we're going to give you a few 60 seconds to get down some concepts in the chat.
In the meantime, I'm going to put some links in the chat for you. This is the Jamboard link. We do have this on a Jamboard as well for you. And let me get which one doesn't belong, website up for you. We are going to be later sharing with you a place where you can get instructional routines, lots of instructional routines, not just this one. So
no, no, just I have it already.
Okay, so I see a little quest starting in the chat about sequence D. I find it fascinating, but we are going to keep on going. And I want to look for how people are possibly using this in their class. Do you see a path for you to use this in your class? Lorraine says classification and reasoning. Exactly. That could be so many areas. ESL, literacy, literature, comparisons between poetry and prose, comparisons between land and sea.
Put mine in the poster. Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. So how did you find this routine? I'm curious to find did people feel lost, or did they feel engaged, or did they feel bored? Oh, money value, exactly. I'm very fascinated to see how teachers would approach this routine. So this is part of the reason I chose this one, so I could hear not only from students, but from teachers. And Fredis says we use money every day, or credit cards as a way to connect to real life. Absolutely, this could connect to financial literacy. Kathy says critical thinking, always a plus when you can find a neat way to encourage critical thinking. Okay. Also, thank you so much for participating in our routines. Actually, now that you're here, I need to encourage you to visit our website. ANN has collected instructional routines that are accessible and challenging to all students, and we present the problem first. All right, so students get to engage before we start offering explanations. I think that honors their way of thinking and gives credence so that they can approach their own thinking, and then we go from there. So allows multiple ways of sense making, promotes understanding through discussion, draws out and builds on what students already know, making their thinking visible. And always a plus, makes math visual, colorful, engaging. That's absolutely a plus. And I think that's why students are willing to talk and engage. All right. So
Right. And
teachers, yes,
sorry.
go ahead, Patricia.
So the word repeatable, we used that earlier when we were talking about instructional designs. And repeatable means that you can try out a routine in your class, see how it goes, and then you could change it up depending on the students that you have, depending on their language skills or their numeracy skills. You can hone it, you can improve it, and that's why a routine is a great thing, because it is repeatable. You can just keep changing it and have it morph to suit your students. Now, these can be used as warm-ups, but they're also useful for teaching content, assessing understanding, like for formative assessments to find out what our students know before. Like maybe we could try to find out what students know before we start an activity on fractions. Like, let's see what they see in this picture, and then we'll talk about fractions. They're great for helping to find out student misunderstandings and misconceptions. So they serve many purposes besides just warm-ups. So Oriel has a question. Do students ever get confused if they're not sure what they are supposed to be learning? Well,
good question.
That is a good question. And my first thought to this would be that with a lot of these routines, it's the students who are driving the conversations and who are driving the discussion. So you're finding out what students know. They are talking about what they are interested in. So they are learning, but they're driving the conversation, and then you can build on what students had already noticed to what you want them to engage with.
And when students are students who don't go to the same class every time and they come in and out, if it's a routine that other members of the class are accustomed to following, well, then there is kind of like a sort of fall in line, and they can ask their peers what's going on. So having something as a routine and repeatable really encourages the class and gives it that structure. So even people who are not consistent, they can fall in line and find out what's happening. So
Right.
I find that the more you use a routine is the less we have time to be spending on this is how you do this. And plus, most routines are easily accessible. Like they only involve 1 or 2 steps of instructions. So yes, very rarely do they get like lost, but it does happen.
I like that comment. I'm always surprised, fascinated by the different ways of learning. And students teach us, right? We learn from students. I learned some things today from seeing your comments that I had not thought of when I looked at those images. So thank you for that. So the Adult Numeracy Network has curated some instructional routines that we're going to share with you. And right now I am going to put a link in the chat for you to be able to follow. Let's see, where is it? Where you can get our collection of instructional routines. These are, right now we're up to 24, I believe it was. Last time I looked, it was 20. So we are continually curating these routines to make sure that they are accessible and doable for adult education students. Not just that, but that there is purpose behind it, so that students are learning the content that they need to learn through these routines. So if you found it, we know you don't have time to like totally look it over now, but you may see routines that you've already done. I love dot talks. But the 2 routines that we did today, they're on this page, but there's lots of other ones. If you want to, feel free to go ahead and comment on something that catches your eye, or something that you've already done that you would like to share your wealth of knowledge about the routine in the class. I mean, with our class here today. So there's lots to look at here, but I do want to show you some of the other free resources that we have available. If you go to the home page of ANN, we see that there is an article from each issue of the Math Practitioner that is available to the general public, to non-members. And there's a calendar of events. I am not signed into ANN right now as a member. So you see there are events here that are available for non-members. The events that I want to highlight right now are on this page. It's our play page. So this play page, if you look here on the bottom, is filled with puzzles and games and ways to think mathematically and have fun doing it. And this summer we are hosting 3 sessions, June 14th, July 12th, and August 16th. And they're sessions where we're gonna just engage with math play, and you can register, and please think about joining us. We have so many resources. So if you look here at the math and numeracy resources, I'm not going to go to this page, the teaching resources, because there's just so many rich activities there. You could look at the instructional routines first, but then also look at the teaching resources. You see there's manipulatives, Desmos, math art, and there's practitioner research, which is something that you could apply for. Teachers who do practitioner research receive a $500 stipend. And this, may be a question you have, like, well, what'll happen in my class if I start using instructional routines? Will I see any improvement with my students? Will they become more engaged? And will it help to build community? Whatever question you have, put in a proposal for a practitioner research project, and see what happens in your classroom, and let us know about it. And there's a $500 stipend for that. And then finally, I would like to mention, since you are here today, we know that math instruction is important to you, so we encourage you to join our network. It's only $20 a year. You can sign up here. It's a 1-year automatically renewing membership. And we hope you'll consider joining us, because in that way you can not only support the development and availability of these resources and opportunities for other teachers, but you can become involved with this community of learners. Like Maggie and I went to an event yesterday. It was about functions, something that was new to me that I had never thought of before, looking at functions that way. So consider joining us for that. And with that, I think I'm going to see if we missed any questions. Oh, somebody said they would love to look at the math art. Yes, Catherine, please check that out. Please check that out. That is fun.
So I just dropped, because we're nearing the end of the session, I just dropped the sign up link for the PD certificate for this session. So please sign up for that if you were here for this and you need that. But we do have a few more minutes for a few last questions or thoughts that people have. And I also encourage you to join the network, because you get to meet like-minded folks and support each other in helping students develop their numeracy and develop your own numeracy, right? I mean, we're the New Jersey Association for Lifelong Learning, and that refers to us as well, right? And not just our students. So as both Maggie and Patricia were pointing out, all of us can continue to learn things about numeracy in our daily lives.
And as your Region 1 representative, representing you to ANN, I would love to hear how we can more support teachers. And having a community such as ANN is a great support. But if you need anyone, if you need any ideas, I noticed that there was a question from Oriol about the questions about ordinal numbers. I would love to have more conversation about that. So definitely when you see our contact information, make sure you stay in touch with us, know how you're using routines, if you need any support, instructional support in classes. This is a great way for us to stay in touch because teaching can be a little lonely. So any opportunity for community, I think would be really great. Anna says she was kicked out and had to rejoin. Could she get the link again for the certificate?
Sure.
Yes, Maggie brings up a super good point. Like a lot of us in adult education, we teach in isolation, don't we? We're teaching in a satellite program that's not even on the main campus. And so the Adult Numeracy Network is a great place to network with other teachers and get great ideas that you can share. And please use our website. The resources that are free to non-members are great. But if you join, there are additional resources available to you as well. And thank you so much for coming today. We loved the numeracy adventure that we took together, and we appreciate all of your participation.